So you've written a book and now you want to get feedback on it. How do you do that? Hi there, I'm Nicole Wilbur, and this is where I think out loud about story. I am a writer, a story nerd, and also an agented author, and I'm currently working on a second draft of a book, not the book that I got signed with, but a second draft of a YA contemporary novel, and I'm at the point where I'm about to send this out to my critique partners and to see what they think about it. And this is obviously a super important part of the process. The biggest inflections in your writing will happen when you get feedback. Now, obviously, it can be very difficult to find good feedback. If you're watching this video, you probably agree with that. And there's different kinds of feedback. There's your critique partners, and critique partners are more for rougher drafts. They might get pieces of the work as you go. They probably know your style really well. They'll help you brainstorm, etc. Then you have beta readers. Beta readers are reading a more complete version of your book, and they're giving you the reader experience. And then you have sort of completely different area, which is editing. And that's sort of a freelance editor, a developmental editor, to go in and look at your story elements, to give a critique of your manuscript, to look at it on the line level, etc. There's a lot of different options for getting feedback on your writing. And today we are going to compare two paid options, Fiverr and Reedsy, for getting feedback on your writing. So I want to start out by saying that you absolutely do not need to pay for feedback on your novel unless you want to. I have done it in a couple of different scenarios. I had my book, Some Kind of Criminal, done. I did 2 developmental edits on it, or a manuscript assessment and then a developmental edit. And then I've also had my query letter critiqued and first pages done for that book. I've used Fiverr for beta reading also for the same book, but I also had free beta readers read the book. So kind of let me explain these two platforms, what I use them for, and then the pros and cons. So Fiverr is obviously like the freelance platform. It kind of feels like the wild, wild west when you log on there, honestly. There's tons and tons of people who are offering services at very different price points, and they handle the whole transaction for you. So you can have a brief, you can approach people who are advertising their services with what you want. They give you a quote, you accept it. There's agreed upon requirements, and they handle the whole money part of it. Reedsy is a platform specifically for publishing professionals. So Fiverr, you have, I'm just reading the top here, graphic and design, programming and tech, digital marketing, video and animation, writing and translation, music and audio, business, finance, etc. On Reedsy, you have, I believe it's editing, cover design, marketing, and a few others. But it is all writing and book publishing specific. And they do the same thing that Fiverr does in terms of helping you write a brief, submitting it to different professionals on the platform, getting the quote, managing the whole process. So as I said before, and I've done a video that has been promoted by Reedsy, but they have no idea I'm doing this. I just thought it would be helpful information for others. So I've used Reedsy for 4 different briefs, and I've hired 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 professionals through Reedsy. Those were my developmental edits. And then my query letter and first pages critiques. Through Fiverr, I hired those beta readers. Now, I also had free beta readers for my book. So when I went to Reedsy, I was looking for a developmental editor specifically. When I went to Fiverr, I was looking for beta readers to give me a very fast turnaround. I also did, and this is so product managery of me, A/B testing. So I had written 2 different openings to my book. Well, actually, the very first chapter was the same on both, but then it was like the second, third chapter, the order of events was very different. And I found some beta readers on Fiverr. It was like one price for a double beta read, so 2 people. And I wanted one to read one version and one to read the other version, and then them both to read both versions, but in a different order, and then tell me what they thought and tell me which one they thought was better. And so I specifically wanted to hire beta readers for that because I wanted a very fast turnaround. I wanted it in like a week. And I had this weird, like, read these two different versions. And at that point, I felt like my critique partners and my other beta readers, I wanted someone with fresh eyes, and I didn't want to put the time into finding completely new people because I didn't want them to read the whole book. I just wanted them to read a section. So let's talk a little bit about my experiences on both and the differences between both. I will say that let's do kind of like pros and cons. So first one is who you're finding on the sites. Part of the reason I wanted to do this video was because I was poking around on Reedsy, kind of for a friend. I was interested. They're a marketer. And I was like, could you get on this site and do marketing in publishing? Whoopsies. And the answer was no, they couldn't, because they have some pretty stringent requirements. So to get on the Reedsy dashboard platform and to be searchable by authors, you have to apply, and they have a human review your application and your profile within 10 days. And then you get on or not. And the requirements are here. And these are minimum requirements. So at least 3 years of professional experience in editing or the service that you're applying for, experience working for a traditional publisher. I don't think you have to meet every single one of these requirements, but this is kind of what they're looking for. Experience working for a traditional publisher, demonstrated experience on a minimum of 5 published books that are recent and well-reviewed on Amazon, Goodreads, Apple Books, etc. If this criteria can't be fulfilled, we can consider work that's been published in renowned journals, magazines, or newspapers only for copy editing and proofreading. Proofreaders also need to be familiar with the Chicago Manual of Style. And that's for your editors. But for designers and illustrators, similarly, it's like they're looking, ghostwriters as well on Reedsy, they're looking for that 3 years of experience on books that are already published, and portfolio, basically a portfolio of work. So you kind of know who you're getting, which is why for developmental editors, I don't know if there's a better place to go besides looking on like social media and finding freelance editors that way. I don't have Instagram, so this was a great option for me. Fiverr, anybody can create a profile. There is no real vetting, but that doesn't mean that there aren't, people who are great and good at their jobs on there. I was very happy with the beta readers that I found, but you do have to do your own vetting and your own research. There aren't those minimum requirements. So let's talk about the pricing next. So Reedsy is quite expensive. You're looking for, I have a quote for some full manuscripts up here. And is this ridiculously expensive? I suppose it depends on your budget, right? So when I was looking for a developmental edit of a full manuscript, the costs quoted to me were between $1,900 and $3,400 from people with a variety of different experience. It's always really exciting I find it so fun to look at the Reedsy editor profiles and to see what books they've worked on, and sometimes they've worked on published books. I worked with the freelance editor who did Mistborn, which was so cool. I thought it was so cool to have her look at my work. But that is what you're looking at. If you go on to Fiverr, you will find a huge variety. You could probably find a developmental edit on Fiverr for as low as a couple $100. At that point, you get into the quality versus quantity, because most people who have been doing this for a while have a, number of cents per word kind of pricing, and that $1,900 to $30,400 for an 85,000 word book seems like a good range from my perspective. I always get a little bit suspicious if someone's going to read 85,000 words, give me an editorial letter, give me inline feedback, and charge that low. However, that's very different, of course, from a beta read. So with an editor, you're getting that very in-depth feedback. You're getting suggestions for improvement. You're getting diagnoses of problems. With beta reading, you are getting the reader experience, which is super duper valuable, but you are taking the reader experience that you're getting in form of inline comments and than trying to diagnose the problems yourself. I always find this really useful. It can be very helpful to then go forth and do the editing, but I've also heard of people getting beta readers and then like hiring an editor to help them figure out what the hell their beta readers were talking about and how to fix the problems that were identified. So that's kind of the difference that you're looking at. Generally, yeah, beta readers should be much cheaper than Fiverr, or than developmental editing, but Fiverr, no matter what service you're looking at, tends to have those lower prices. When you are looking at the platform, this is another interesting one. Fiverr is very good for, browsing and for speed. So you can order fast. It's very transaction based. You can buy services quickly. So a lot of them will have preset services that you can say, okay, I want that package. When I did it, I wanted something a little custom because I wanted them to read 2 versions of the same book. And I was very particular with my little A/B test. So I had to ask for a quote. But Reedsy, it's always you submit a brief, they send quotes back. They might not give a quote if the project doesn't sound like a good fit or they don't think that they can, help with what you're looking for, which is honestly great because you want someone who will be enthusiastic about your story, not someone who, might not jive with you. They can say, oh, I don't take that genre, and they'll just kind of reject the proposal and you're all good. But they will send those quotes, and it's kind of like hiring a contractor. It's a little bit more collaborative. There's also, it's really well kind of lined up when you look into the platform in terms of how you manage. So it shows your activity, it shows the brief, it shows the offer, it shows the files, and it really helps you. I keep going back to an editorial thing I had in 2022, and I can go right back in and I can access the files. Not that you can't on Fiverr, but it is really set up for publishing. So there you go. Reedsy versus Fiverr. I would love to hear if you've used either of these platforms to get paid feedback on your writing. I will link below those authors and YouTubers and folks who help do critique partner matchups, because those are just as valuable. As I said, I've done all the things: critique partners, free beta readers, paid beta readers, and developmental editors. So this kind of runs the gamut. This is just an overview of my experience. If you like these kinds of videos and you like chatting about writing, you want to dive more into story, you want to look at why specific stories work, click the like button and subscribe below. You can also check out my Substack, which I will ping below. I have an article where I talk about beta reader feedback and how to interpret it specifically, and that might be interesting to you. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Nicole Wilbur, and I will see you next time.